Support for Fameless is brought to you by Ready Quick Dry Cleaners. Do you have an interview for that dream job coming up, but you're worried that red stain on your favorite dry clean only white blouse is going to blow it for you? Well, don't be petty. Call Ready Quick Dry Cleaners, where they'll have it ready quick. That's Ready Quick, your trusted full-service dry cleaner. Family owned for 35 years.
I had a dream, a wonderful dream.
Famous. A small percentage of individuals who possess a favorable widespread reputation related to their personality and achievements? Fameless. The rest of us. Oh, well, that sucks.
You're listening to Fameless, a brand new podcast for the rest of us, where we examine the curious human desire for fame. We'll talk with fameless people about what fuels their desire for fame and the challenges they've faced in pursuit of it. For the only people who know more about what it takes to make it in this world than those who made it are those who didn't. So come along with us on our journey down the bumpy road to fame, where we'll discover the only real difference between the famous and the fameless is one right turn. My first guest? Me. Episode 1, Take 1. So, you want to be an actor? I've been grappling with that question for more than 35 years since my father first asked it. And ever since then, I haven't been able to acknowledge it to anyone. Not even myself. I guess you could say that's one of my greatest challenges. Admitting it. Especially to myself. Yes, goddammit. I want to be an actor. I want to be in pictures, okay? There. I said it. Why is that so difficult? For 35 years, I've been secretly chasing this crazy dream. Afraid to tell anyone out of fear that they'd question me or, worse, laugh at me. I don't know exactly when it all started, but I can tell you I wasn't one of those kids who ran around the house singing and dancing. Nor was I one of those kids whose lives are so awful that they have to pretend they're someone else just to escape it. No, my experience was much different. And if I had to put a date on it, I'd say it was New Year's Eve 1980. I was laid up on the couch nursing a sprained knee as a result of a rowdy backyard game of kill the guy with the ball. As my mother and I sat watching television, an old movie came on. My mother's love for the movies was not kept a secret, as she often talked about it in the stories she shared from her own childhood. The movie was Penny Serenade with Cary Grant. As a middle school kid, I didn't realize it at the time, but it stuck with me, as did the movie that followed. It's a mad, 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 mad world. It was a spectacular introduction to screwball comedies delivered by some of the greatest actors of all time. I'll never forget it. Around that time, I would also become aware of what a movie buff my grandfather was. We would talk about movies and actors while we sat fishing, and laugh as we recalled Benny Hill episodes from the week before. In high school, I went on to letter in 4 sports, realizing later the only reason I participated in them was because of the stage they provided. But it wasn't until I got to college that it all made sense. When my art professor mentioned the theater director was looking for someone to design the poster for the play, I jumped at the opportunity. Ironically, the director suggested I try out for the play, something my high school English teacher attempted to do unsuccessfully on multiple occasions. I took him up on it. The first moment I stepped out on that stage, I was hooked. It was like a crack addiction with a happy ending. And I know one day I'll have to give up the crack and the one-night stands and maybe settle down in a quiet little town. But for now, I just want to keep smoking it. All I've ever wanted since that day is the kind of life that could give itself back to it freely. But life was never in the right place at the right time for me. So all I've really been able to do is live vicariously through my deep-seated exhibitionist alter ego, not unlike that of Ben Stiller's Zoolander. For when I was 20 years old, while planning to head west, my father contracted meningitis. 4 months later, he was released from the hospital and has spent the last 36 years in a wheelchair. My plans quickly changed as I chose to stick around to help my mother. There I was with a pocket full of dreams, 2,000 miles away from that place where dreams come true. Thankfully, my dreams never left my pocket, and my beloved Chicago was just 80 miles down the road, where I was lucky enough to sign with Shirley Hamilton, the sweetest, kindest, nicest talent agency on the planet. For 30 years, they've stuck with me through thick and thin, sending me out on countless auditions for film, television, print, a few of which I have been lucky enough to land. Just enough to keep me going, keep me fighting, keep me dreaming. Sometimes I think it would have been a hell of a lot easier had someone along the way just said, "Hey, you suck, quit." But when you love something this much, it takes a lot more than that to get you to give up. No, not even a colossal failure of a Zoom callback audition for the job of a lifetime could get me to do that. You're listening to Fameless, a podcast for the rest of us. After the break, I'll share a written account of that colossal failure, which I'm sure you'll all agree is the powers that be saying, "Hey, you suck, quit." Welcome back to Fameless, a podcast for the rest of us. Thank you for listening. Before the break, I mentioned a colossal failure of an audition. That was a gross understatement. Episode 1, take 2. So how did it go?
The day before the 2023 holiday break, a coveted tradition anxiously awaited by teachers and school-aged children everywhere, as I was sitting at my desk in the high school classroom where I teach cinema and photography, I received an email from my talent agent containing an audition breakdown for a groovy underwear commercial. I was more than ecstatic, having waited some 30 years since first being exposed as a young actor model to the likes of Calvin Klein underwear ads for such an opportunity. An opportunity for the exhibitionist in me to break free from the bondage of modern clothing and just run brazenly through the streets in my underwear yelling, "Look at me!" To be on the safe side, I waited for all the students to leave the building and spent the rest of the evening in my underwear, safely behind the double-locked doors of my photography classroom, setting up the perfect audition set complete with body chiseling lighting like a mad scientist concocting a potion for youth and virility. I shot take after take, scrutinizing every last detail, pumping up with dumbbells between each one until maintenance kicked me out at 11 p.m. By the next evening, I had managed to edit hours of footage succinctly down to the required 30 seconds and sent it off. The holidays came and went, as did the audition. Or so I thought, for on Friday, January 5th, I received an email from my agent informing me I got the callback. It would be a 6-minute virtual audition over Zoom that Monday. When I clicked on the schedule to select a time, the only slot available was from 1:16 to 1:22 p.m., right at the beginning of my 7th-hour class. That part of my brain so adept at formulating creative solutions to complex situations kicked into high gear, an innate ability I pride myself on. But what I never realized until now was that I am equally as adept at creating problems, for the very problems I am so quick to solve are more often than not the very problems I create. Taking the day off was not one of those solutions, on account of my work ethic. not to mention my inability to validate my acting escapades as legitimate endeavors. So instead, I discussed the situation with my principal after school that night, sans the underwear thing, who assured me we could work something out. I proceeded to spend the next 5 hours setting up what I thought would be the ideal audition space, safely tucked away in the old dark room of my photography class, where I could be afforded complete privacy and silence. In further preparation, I spent the weekend studying the script and researching everything and everyone associated with the project, as well as immersing myself in Edith Piaf tunes, something that was alluded to in the script direction. I was going to be ready for this one. When I got to school Monday morning, I set about soliciting available teachers willing to take the last 10 minutes of my 6th-hour class and the first 10 minutes of my 7th-hour class, as all I needed was 6 minutes. 10 less than my 5th grade social studies teacher, Mr. Eschman, who would disappear for 15 minutes at a time to go outside and smoke a cigarette. A lucky strike, to be exact, as we could all clearly see the package protruding through the thin, worn pocket of his white dress shirts, the faint but recognizable red target hovering directly over his heart, an irony that lay out in semi-transparency before us. I found 2 helpful souls who assured me it would be no problem to send my students to them.
Yeah, sure, just send them up, whatever.
I had only one more detail to work out: the Zoom connection. I texted a friend and asked if they could quickly set up a Zoom link through which we could test and troubleshoot the platform in an effort to stave off any technological disasters. It worked. Everything was going as planned. I taught all morning, and during my lunch period, chose beauty over sustenance, taking advantage of the time to style my hair as per the character, apply a bit of makeup, lay out any necessary accessories, and check and double check every last detail, including the giant 24 by 36 inch poster board sign I taped to the door directing my 7th-hour students to report to the library for the first 10 minutes of class. Suddenly, 6th hour was upon me, 50 minutes till showtime. I worked with my students until 1 p.m., when I gathered them together and escorted them to their temporary location. I hurried back to my classroom, double-checked the lock, and anxiously entered the old, rickety black, cylindrical, revolving dark room door like a curious, unwitting time traveler unaware of the sheer dangers the future holds, not to mention the effects it will have upon him when he returns to the present, should he be so lucky. Once inside, I quickly stripped down to my underwear, rubbed a layer of Vaseline onto my arms, torso, and legs to emphasize muscle tone, took one last look around, and with a feeling of assuredness unlike I have ever known, tapped the join button on that Zoom link. A message popped up letting me know they would be with me shortly. I was in. All I had to do now was wait. As I stood there watching the little Zoom meter go round and round, I took advantage of the time to ground myself and calm my racing heartbeat by thinking about everything I went through to get to this point. And now, here I was, more prepared than ever, and never once did it occur to me how absolutely ridiculous it all was that I was in the darkroom of my photography class, where I am a trusted high school public education teacher, wearing nothing but my underwear, waiting to join a Zoom meeting. How ironic it all was that up until that moment I had an irrational fear of being caught on Zoom in my underwear, and there I was, calm, cool, collected. I'm not sure if it's on account of being naive or just plain stupid, for I'm sure it was at some point well before this that my perfect plan was already starting to go to hell. But right around the time I felt my heartbeat normalize is right around the time I heard an administrator in the hall tell some transient students to get to class because we were having a fire drill. In sheer desperation, I considered running out in the hall and asking them to wait, but remembered I was in my underwear. I no sooner reached for my pants when the alarm went off. The sound of 1,400 students vacating the building along with a 120 decibel alarm had no trouble penetrating the walls and ceiling of my once quiet sanctuary. My brain immediately abandoned me in search of solutions, but none could be found. I pleaded with the Zoom gods to postpone the arrival of my hosts. And about 30 seconds in, at the height of the mayhem, my gracious hosts arrived. Mortified, I did my best to gather my composure and told them that noise they were hearing was the fire alarm, and that I think they said it was a drill, so I'm pretty sure we're okay. The casting director gasped, "Oh my God, are you sure? We can reschedule." I said, "No, it's okay. Just let me know if you see smoke swirling around me. I just want you to know how dedicated I am." In their final request for reassurance, the casting director and the director asked one more time if I was okay, and through the wailing alarm and trampling feet, I gave them an affirming yes. But I could tell from their worried faces they were not convinced. With obvious apprehension, the casting director said, "Well, okay then, let's get started." And with that, gave me my direction. Now, I'm not sure if it was on account of the circumstances or the style in which she directed, but I could barely comprehend even the simplest of directions. At one point, she said I would be dancing with her, but not with her. What? And then proceeded to describe how she wanted me to dance, quirky like in a Wes Anderson film. I began to dance a slow, rhythmic shimmy when she interrupted to tell me to put my arms at my sides. So of course I complied. Then she told me not to move my shoulders, or my arms, or my head, leaving my hips as the only remaining part of my body still moving. And there I was in my underwear, my hips slowly gyrating around in tiny circles. She suggested we move on to the second scene. I didn't argue, and much like the first, the directions were vague. I did my best to interpret them and perform the scene. By this time, the alarm had silenced. A bell rang to signal to the students it was safe to return into the building, at which point the classroom phone began to ring. Then stopped. Then rang again, accompanied by the sound of 1,400 students re-entering the building. The casting director asked me a few final questions, not least of which was, what do you do to stay in such great shape? Fearing I was already over my time limit, and that the phone call was urgent, and that kids would soon breach the fortification of my hideout, I bit my tongue and told her I mainly lift weights. But what I really wanted to say in that humbling moment was that the reason I still look like this at 56 years old is because I'm still desperately holding on to the dream that one day I might be lucky enough to get a job like this. But I didn't. So I just said thank you and signed off. As I stood there in my underwear waiting for the metaphoric smoke to clear, I began reflecting on what the hell just happened. Assuming my students would be on their way back up to the library following the fire drill, awaiting word from me that I was once again available, I figured I had a few minutes to search through the charred remains for my dignity, when suddenly the phone rang again. Certain now it was urgent, I quickly passed back through the rotating door and into the classroom. As I picked up the phone, I heard keys jingling in the door lock accompanied by a crowd of voices. I dropped the phone and quickly darted back into the darkroom where I left my clothes. That old revolving door functioning yet again like a time machine, only this time sending me back to that fateful night in high school when my girlfriend's parents arrived home earlier than expected. Only this was going to be far more than a private matter between families. This was going to be national news. I mean the kind of thing that would force you to have to move, not on account of embarrassment, but on account of the 20 million new social media followers making it impossible to go to the grocery store. I snapped back to the present when I heard the leader of this teenage mob, an overzealous administrator who clearly missed the aforementioned giant sign on the door, call out, "Hello, Mr. Holling? Are you in here?" "I'll be right out," I yelled, as I fumbled to button my shirt while stepping into my shoes. In an attempt to snuff out any assumptions that may have already been organizing themselves around me, I quickly rotated back through the revolving door and into the classroom with my shoes half on, 3 buttons undone, and 1 sleeve rolled up. Talk about assumptions. Again, the phone began to ring. I was finally able to answer it.
Hello?
It was the librarian apologizing for letting my students come back early and that she tried to stop them, as there they all stood, staring at me. I hung up and carried on with business as usual until the end of the day when I could finally sit down and revisit the entire ordeal in an effort to not only assess the damage it caused, but also learn from it. As I sat at my desk decompressing, my principal walked in with an unwitting look of hope and optimism and asked, "So how did it go?" I said, "Seriously? A fire drill?" The look on his face turned to one of horror and with a matching tone exhaled, "I'm so sorry. I thought you were done." I said, "Hey, it's not your fault. You got a school to run." He said, "Well, I guess you're not getting this one." I said, "Yeah, but they sure will remember me." And besides, as crazy as it all was, it was still a hell of a lot more fun than the commercial could have ever been. On the drive home, my Spotify continued where it left off with Edith Piaf. I debated selecting a playlist less reminiscent of recent events when a song came on that resonated with me. There was something about it that I connected with on a level that I just can't explain. For you see, I don't understand a lick of French, but what I do understand is that the sound of tragedy is universal. Adieu mon cœur, on te jette à mourir, or something like that. However you say it, it translates to goodbye, my heart. One is throwing you to tragedy. And don't I know it. Thank you for listening to Fameless, a podcast for the rest of us. Join us next time as we continue to examine the curious human desire for fame. We'll talk with Guy DiBenedetto, a longtime friend and Chicago actor, about the challenges he's faced in pursuit of it, where I'm hoping he'll share a few of his own failed audition experiences. I can tell you right now, you will not be disappointed. Unless in the meantime, he should suddenly become famous. This episode was written and produced by myself, Guy Holling.